This video is going to be time-lapse, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to work. I find a lot of people struggle with composition because they do sketches and the sketches just aren't turning out because a lot of times they don't know what to draw. So I decided to do something very simple. I'm going to have an orb, and that's why I titled this whole video Floaty Orb, because I think everyone has a floaty orb in their portfolio nowadays, and a triangle to represent a person or a vehicle or anything. So what I'm going to do is move these two shapes around into different compositions, but that's kind of how I'm going to start. How I actually like to do compositions for work is I will open a new document, and let's just tone down the canvas just so it's not white, and I create a new layer and I fill it with black. And another thing I find people do is they will always make the same frame, the same 16:9 ratio. Maybe it's more like this, like TV widescreen. And it's true, the end product for games is this ratio, but for concept art and illustration, it doesn't have to be. You can have fun with any type of frame. So I've got a vertical frame here. I've got a square frame. I could even go really wide like this. And what I do in the video is I will copy. Let's just change the tone of this a little bit just to lighten it a little bit. So how I like to start is I will put down a horizon and I will draw out from that horizon, and I will copy these shapes in, and I will arrange them until they come up with like a little bit of an interesting composition or something I can work with. I think this is a lot of fun, and I think you actually learn quite a lot from just experimenting with just these simple shapes. So I'm following the same procedure I showed in the demo before. I create a new layer, and I like making just random aspect ratios, random frames. I strike down my horizon and I go ahead and start placing some of these shapes. As I work on the composition, I can start adding shapes, and in this case the idea for this one came to me is, okay, there's an opening at the bottom and a bunch of cables are coming out of it. This one here, the floaty orb, is like suspended above some sort of apparatus. Here I change the camera angle. I place the horizon very, very high up so that it makes us look like we're looking down on it. Here I'm repeating the orb shape a few times. Now right there I pulled out a custom shape, which is like this this ground plane. I use custom shapes a lot to detail things quickly. I have another video for that, but it's a technique it's around. You can get lots of tutorials on it. See, I almost repeated the same idea as the second thumbnail, but I quickly changed that to make it as if it's between a big chasm. This one was probably the most problematic. I changed the orientation and the size of everything. I wanted the figure to be closer to the camera, and maybe there's some sort of platform that's extending into the orb, and the orb is so big that it doesn't take up, or sorry, it takes up most of the space. And you can see here I just tried quickly, oh, let's make, maybe if it works better if it's smaller. Well, that defeats the purpose of what I was going for. I think that one has a lot of potential, but it probably needs to be redrawn a few times. I shifted some things around here and roughed in this big mechanical thing hovering above with like this arm that comes out above the orb. So now I'm really just doing a quick render pass on all these. You know, spheres are probably the easiest thing to render. And back to one of my custom shapes. This is some sort of floor panel or walkway. And even with these scenes being so large, you can just rough in a little bit of a background, and all of a sudden it becomes an interior shot. I thought I would try repeating the orb shape here, and I extended it up, but that shape just wasn't working. You can see me, I try a couple other ideas here, and then just end up deciding to go with another circular shape. I'm thinking this is on some sort of planet, and I rough in with the lasso tool a few mountains. So here I want to create some sort of textures for the orbs, and I open up a new document, and I'm using the smudge brush and drawing in I'm drawing in some detail and making selections. And anytime you see the screen get red there, I'm using the quick mask feature, which is just Q on your keyboard. If you make a selection and hit Q, you are able to easily transform it, and then you just hit Q again and you're back to your document. So I made one, I duplicated it, now I'm smudging it around trying to create something different inside. So this is a small variation on what I previously did. And I'm just going to overlay these onto the orbs and just add some detail. I found these two were really similar, so for the third one I do here, I try and do something a lot more abstract. So lots of quick mask to move my selection around and transform it. You know, Sparth writes about the 70-30 rule that he tries to follow, and it's such a great rule, a great guideline. Leave 70% of it open and smooth, and then put your detail in that 30%. Let the eye rest in the 70%. So here I've overlaid the textures that I created, and I'm just massaging them into place, erasing bits out, lowering the opacity. I delete some of the white that got attached to the images when I smudged them around. can see I move into the warp mode just to, because I want the textures to go along with perspective, so I kind of have to adjust it because I don't want them to be totally flat. They wouldn't read right. And even this one here, I just ended up just repainting it by hand because it just wasn't aligning properly to perspective that I established. I'm erasing the triangle temporaries for them, and I'm plopping in my I have a brush with a little soldier, a little guy. So even when these are still really rough, you can then, you know, take these out, paint over them directly, or move into 3D, take the idea. The whole point of this demonstration was to show you how to create some compositions using an idea. So these spheres, they could even change in design. You could then take these, spend a day designing different types of orbs. You know, these don't even have to be sci-fi orbs. They could be fantasy orbs or whatever. Or the shape can change completely. They could be pyramids. You know, they're still going to occupy the same space. If you were to change them into pyramids, you'd have to have, you know, you'd have to think about your secondary shapes as being something else. Maybe your secondary shapes, instead of mountains on that one, maybe they're maybe it's a forest. So those round shapes of the forest are contrasting with the pyramid shapes of the new thing that's floating. This one was again the toughest one. I ended up just making some sort of, well, maybe it's a part of the orb is being exposed. It's some sort of machine. This one, in my opinion, is the weakest one. I still like the idea of it being so huge. I think I'd have to do another pass on this thing. Because I do like the idea of the character being the biggest part in the scene, but it's only because you don't see the full sphere. I use a lot of custom shapes. It just helps sell thumbnails very quickly. You know, putting in some atmosphere. And I'm numbering them. This is something I always do. This is how I label my work, my real work. I put what it is, what project it is, what it is, my name, and the date. I think it's always important to do that because everybody in the studio knows whose work that is. People that aren't artists, like producers or other administrative people, they know who the artist was, and they can come to me if they have any questions. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks again for watching.